Hello everyone. Hope you're all rocking. What do you see in the picture? Look carefully. Can you see an animal? Or is it a bird? Is it a duck looking left or a rabbit looking right? Rabbit-duck illusion. This is an ambiguous image in which the observer can see either a rabbit or a duck. This experience is a wonderful example for how readers interpret and perceive things differently. Reader response criticism focuses on the role of the reader in making meaning. This was a reaction against the formalist schools like New Criticism, which removed the reader's role completely from the generation of meaning of a text. They asked, what happened to the reader? Reader response criticism originated from the philosophy of Phenomenology and Hermeneutics and consisted of several approaches which analyzed the meaning of a text based on the context from which the reader approaches a text. These people are trying to analyze how a reader makes meaning. Chumma, he likes Virginia Woolf and she likes James Joyce എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ തീരുന്ന ഒരു പ്രശ്നമല്ല ഇത്. They needed to systematically present how the reader makes meaning. They are theorizing this process. Two things are essential. One is, how does the reader experience the text? What happens in the reader's consciousness? What structures of thought are created in the consciousness? Can a critic describe the responses happening in the mind of the reader to each line in a text? This is what phenomenology deals with. Secondly, the reader has to interpret what she has read. There should be a method for this subjective experience. Hermeneutics is a method with the necessary tools to deal with the problems that arise when dealing with meaningful human actions and the products of such actions, most importantly, texts. It will be a different experience for different people. But the reader or the critic has to defend why or what made her choose this model of interpretation. She has to document the interpretation. This is where hermeneutics comes in. Hermeneutics is a term used to refer to the theory and methodology of interpretation. The term was initially applied to the interpretation of biblical texts, wisdom literature, and philosophical texts. We had discussed phenomenology in our introductory class. Do you remember any of it? Well, I'll quickly run through it. Phenomenology is the philosophical study of the structures of experience and consciousness. Phenomenon means that which appears, and logos means study. It is the study of the phenomena as the individual experiences it. It examines how we experience objects or events in our consciousness and how our consciousness structures these experiences. ഒരാളുടെ മനസ്സിൽ എന്ത് നടക്കുന്നു എന്നുള്ളത് വിവരിക്കുക വളരെയധികം കുഴപ്പം പിടിച്ചിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു സംഗതിയാണ്. എന്നാലും ആ ചിന്തകളെ ഒബ്ജക്റ്റീവായി ബയസില്ലാതെ പഠിക്കാനുള്ള ശ്രമങ്ങളാണ് ഫിനോമിനോളജി എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. Edmund Husserl said that an object existed in the consciousness of the subject and it has no independent existence. What does that mean? When you speak about a novel, you're aware of your experience of it, which is unique because it is your experience. So when you describe it, it is invariably your version or your experience of the novel that is being described. Your mind represents your experience of the novel. This applies to every object we see or think about. ഒരു വസ്തുവിനെ കുറിച്ച് നമ്മൾ ചിന്തിക്കുമ്പോഴും നമ്മുടെ മനസ്സ് ആ വസ്തുവിൻ്റെ ഒരു റെപ്രസെൻറ്റേഷൻ ഉണ്ടാക്കിയെടുക്കുന്നുണ്ട്. നമ്മുടെ കോൺഷ്യസ്നെസ് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ ഇതുപോലെയുള്ള പല വസ്തുക്കളെയും അനുഭവങ്ങളെയും കുറിച്ചുള്ള റെപ്രസെൻറ്റേഷൻസിൻ്റെ ഒരു കളക്ഷനാണ്. Each mental state or experience is in this way a representation of something other than itself, and so gives one a sense of something. This representational character of mind or consciousness is intentionality. മനസ്സിൻ്റെ ഒരു പ്രത്യേകത അല്ലെങ്കിൽ സ്വഭാവമാണ് ഈ ഇന്റൻഷനാലിറ്റി എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. It's a representational character. Husserl uses the term intentionality to refer to the characteristic feature of our mental states and experiences. Suppose if you are thinking of a film, your mind is directed at it. When we say we are aware or conscious, we are aware of something. Intentionality is the directedness or mind or states of mind to things, objects, states of affairs and events. Consciousness is made up of intentional acts correlated to intentional objects. ഓരോ വസ്തുക്കളുടെ നേർക്ക് തിരിച്ചിട്ടുള്ള ശ്രമങ്ങളാണ് നമ്മുടെ മനസ്സ് എന്ന്. The intentionality of consciousness is its directedness towards objects, which it helps to constitute word in our minds. Roman Ingarden applied phenomenology to literature. Accordingly, a literary work originates in the intentional acts of consciousness of the author. Georges Paulet, a critic of the Geneva School of Criticism, examines the act of reading using three consciousness. Which are they? The consciousness of the author, the consciousness of the reader, and the third, the consciousness of the text or the book. He said that the act of reading is a process where the consciousness of the reader opens the consciousness of the text. So, during the act of reading, we have an interaction of three consciousness: that of the author, the reader, and the book. The text is understood in the consciousness of the reader and not of the author. Paulet calls his method criticism of consciousness. Hence, Geneva School of Critics are also known as critics of consciousness. ടെക്സ്റ്റ് എവിടെയാണ് ഉണ്ടാവുന്നത്? വായനക്കാരുടെ മനസ്സിലാണ്, എഴുത്തുകാരൻ്റെ അല്ല, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ എഴുത്തുകാരുടെ അല്ല. റീഡേഴ്സ് അണ്ടർസ്റ്റാൻഡിങ് മേക്സ് ദ ടെക്സ്റ്റ് എന്നാണ് ഇവർ പറയുന്നത്. The reader response critics believed the meaning of a text is not self-formulated. അത് സ്വന്തമായിട്ടുണ്ടാകുന്ന ഒന്നല്ല, ഫോർമൽ സ്കൂളുകൾ പറഞ്ഞ പോലെ. But is generated when the reader acts on the material. There were several approaches which can be classified under this broad umbrella term, reader response theory. according to M.H. Abrams, നമ്മുടെ ഗ്ലോസറി എഴുതിയിട്ടുള്ള വളരെ ഇമ്പോർട്ടൻ്റ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ഗ്ലോസറി എഴുതിയിട്ടുള്ള M.H. Abrams, their strategies differed on several counts, such as what are the primary factors which shape a reader's response? There were also differences of, secondly, there was also difference of opinion as to what is objectively given in the text and the subjective response of the reader. What do you mean by objective and subjective? Objective meaning is that what is not affected by the personal feelings of the reader. Something is that based on the reader's opinions, interests, prejudices, anxiety. For example, we have objective type questions which have only limited responses. In the multiple choice question paper, the answers have to be chosen from the choices given. It's either A, B, C or D, or maybe you can have A and B. So the choices are limited. So the evaluator has to award the marks if the student chooses the correct option. On the other hand, an essay question is subjective, and the marks awarded will depend on the person's views or personal views of the evaluator. When we read a poem, there are few aspects of the poem which we feel are objectively given and few that are subjective. Can we consider the words printed on the page as the text, or is the text formed completely in the mind of the reader? Suppose you see the term Uppumu Lagudi Pili. A reader can read this as Uppumu Lagudi Pili. Or if you know something about certain ingredients, then you will identify Uppu Mulaga Tippili. There is a difference between what is objectively given in the book and subjectively interpreted by the reader. There are differences as to what extent the text controls the reader's responses as to authorize some readings as misreadings. നമ്മൾ ചിലപ്പോൾ പറയാറില്ലേ, കാട് കയറി ചിന്തിക്കണ്ട എന്നൊക്കെ. ഒരു മുറിയുടെ കർട്ടൻ്റെ നിറം നീലയാണെന്ന് വെച്ച് എഴുതിയിട്ടുണ്ട്. അത് കടലിൻ്റെ അഗാധതയെ പ്രതിനിധാനം ചെയ്യുന്നു എന്ന് വേണമെങ്കിൽ പറയാം. പക്ഷെ ചിലപ്പോൾ അത് വെറുമൊരു നിറം മാത്രമാകാം. ചിലപ്പോൾ എഴുത്തുകാരിക്ക് നീല നിറം ഇഷ്ടമാകാം, അല്ലായിരിക്കാം. Some readings can be considered as misreadings. Depends where the reader draws the line. In the next video, we will examine 5 variants of reader response criticism.